we may not have to do as many guest introductions with some of the return guests for this series, but since Dr. Westman, since this is the first time you're on the show, maybe share with our listeners a little bit about your background for those who aren't as detailed in the low carb community as maybe others are.
Oh, sure. Well, and thank you for having me on the show, Zach. We crossed paths a few times. One time at I think it was San Diego, Low Carb USA, Doug Reynolds and his group.
Yeah.
Great to hear you speak there. And I refer folks to you when the low carb questions go out of my pay grade. I'm an internal medicine specialist, and like Michelle, we weren't taught the low carb diet. In fact, in the medical world, and I hate to say this, but I've been a physician now for 30 years at Duke, and I'm not sure where the time went. But so I think of myself as one of the research teams that sort of put the science around low carb and keto to make sure that there was a tolerable range that you could be in and still be safe or even thrive. So as an internal medicine specialist, I realized my tools were not good enough to treat the obesity and diabetes, the high blood pressure, the things that a traditional internist has to treat. We teach doctors even today to use medication for all these things. So that didn't satisfy me. I went out to get special training, and in a large part because I listened to my patients. A couple of my patients were doing the Atkins diet back, before 2000, and it was curious to me. It was, exciting because they basically fixed their problem, the weight loss, without my help. They didn't even need a doctor to do it. So back then, I had concerns about safety and whether you could do it long term. So we started to study it. So we have been studying the diet and using the low carb keto diet in the clinical setting, meaning treating people with diabetes, high blood pressure, obesity, of course, as well. But we've been doing that now for 20 years. And we published our papers in the early, I'd say from 2000 to 2010 in the medical literature, the high quality publications, randomized trials. And as Michelle said, now there's so many studies all over the world. The low carb diet really has had the most, scrutiny about it because everyone thought it was bad, but it's not bad. So I just want to try to bring people up to speed that all of the same concerns that you may hear from your doctor today, I had those 20 years ago. Can you eat this fat and be healthy? Is it okay to not eat carbohydrates? Can you run without sugar and starch? I mean, I thought you carb loaded. All these things were going through my mind 20 years ago. So I went and learned from doctors who had used it for 30 years during their careers. And then we wrapped the science around it, like Jeff Volek at UConn, now at Ohio State. We're one of two groups, Jeff's being the other, that started studying the diet. And I don't think I'm not known in the athletic world because that's not my world. My world is diabetes, high blood pressure, the clinical medicine. So I became president of the Obesity Medicine Association and taught other doctors the low carb keto diet. And we've been doing that for 10 years. And at Duke, we've been using this for 15 years in a university-based clinical practice of basically, I call it keto medicine now, because it's basically like internal medicine, but I usually just use a keto diet. And then in Gary Taubes's book recently, The Case for Keto, he tells the story of how my clinic was one of the clinics that taught many doctors who are using the keto diet now. So I guess to summarize it, as my brother says, who's a marketing guy, he says, that's my brother Eric, he validated the Atkins diet. And then I'm like, well, I did more than that, So we researched it, we studied it, and as a clinical doctor, I've always studied and used in my clinic what I've been studying. So that iterative process, going back and forth, testing out things in the real clinical world.